As you can see from the beginning of the video, there is going to be a crash in this one, but I promise it will not let you down. This is the Lake Bluff Criterium, the first of the, I believe, 9 races I did for the Intelligentsia Cup this year, 2018. Category 3, we had a pretty good field throughout the whole week, throughout the whole series actually. I'm not huge on this race, mostly because it seems like every time I do this race, something goes wrong and something happens to me. As you can see, the roads are kind of narrow, not super narrow, but they feel very narrow as you're going through the corners. And then as you come out of that left-hand turn, there's some railroad ties along the side of the road there. You can actually get pretty close to them and carry a lot of speed through that corner, but it does feel kind of sketchy if you really are railing that turn. This is the back half of the course, so there's a slight chicane here in the middle of this straightaway, and then we go straight into the finishing straight, which is a long stretch from the last corner. So you'll turn left here, and all the way about 500 meters from the corner is where the finish line is. So it's a long stretch, and it's slightly uphill, and you can really feel that towards the end of the race. It's not something you can feel, right at the beginning, but it really starts to take its toll. Here, right away, after the first lap, somebody tries to go off the front. I went into this race wanting to work for my teammate Steven. He needed upgrade points after winning the state championship the week previous to this. I did not need any more upgrade points, so I really wanted to work for him. So I chased this move down pretty quickly, able to shut it down, and then the rest of the field comes by, and I'm happy to just sit on a wheel. A couple laps later, I was feeling pretty good, so I went to the front to see if I could get some separation and just really try and rail it through these corners, because what I was noticing is as we were going through the corners, a lot of the field would get really, really stretched out, and so it was my idea to just try and see if we could split the field through the more technical part of the course. And I'm really just kind of pushing the pace through the corners. You can see I do get relatively close to the edge of the road there. Not super close, but close enough to where some people are probably not going to want to carry as much speed. Nothing really came of my move. Here I know that I can start to fall back and let Hassan and Steven there kind of move towards the front and cover the front of the pack as I rest a little bit. And here is where disaster strikes. As I come out of the corner, you'll kind of hear it. My front tubular started to flat. I thought I was fine. I thought I was going to be just totally fine and move to the side. And then I don't really know what happened. Maybe I hit a bump or the rim just kind of grabbed the pavement, and I just get bucked off the bike after the front wobbles and I couldn't recover. I was relatively okay. I just had a little bit of rash on my hip and on my left leg. You can kind of see there. But overall, I was fine. Just making sure I didn't hit my head. I knew that I could go to the pit and take a free lap, so I wasn't in any rush to get up off of the ground and just run straight over to the pit. I wanted to make sure I was okay first. So I'm waiting at the pit. Apparently what happened while I was on the ground during the crash is that there was another crash, and that kind of split the field. Not a ton, but enough to where there was a pretty decent breakaway with some pretty strong riders in it. And so what ends up happening is the breakaway comes by right here, and I get sent off. Now, probably not ideal. It's not really fair to these guys in the break, but I was for sure not just going to go fall back to the peloton if I'm getting put in between the break and the peloton. So I tell Joe here to keep pulling. Let's get up to the front group here, there. And I make a pretty big effort to try and get up there as well. Joe was pretty flustered with what happened, which is understandable, but you can only control what you can control, and it was not my decision to put me in there, but I definitely wasn't just going to fall back. So as you can see, I'm working my way up towards the breakaway because I can see that my teammate Steven is also in there, and if we can get 2 riders in the breakaway, that's super ideal. So at this point, Steven is up off the front, really trying to just get away from the breakaway. He must have been feeling really good that day. So I'm happy to just sit last wheel in this break and not do any work. And most of the time through the entire rest of the race, I just sat in and tried to recover a little bit and kind of lick my wounds while I was in this breakaway because my leg was in quite a bit of pain. My hip at this point was just like pretty beat up. But overall, I was just trying to sit on and not do any work. So these 2 guys right here on the left, Anton, and then I cannot remember the guy on the red bike's name, but they were extremely strong. They were pulling the breakaway for most of the race. And you can see here I try to get to the front to slow the pace down a little bit and maybe give Steven an even bigger gap. But the rest of the breakaway is not having that, and they just pull around me, which is what they're supposed to do. I mean, Mark up there knows that my teammate is up the road and that I'm not going to pull and that I'm just going to make the breakaway, try to not catch him. We do end up catching Steven, and I kind of sit up a little bit so that he can grab my wheel, and that way I can work him back up into the breakaway and he just isn't gassed right away and just gets blown off the back. Like I said, I was working for Steven in this race. I really just wanted to get him the win or on the podium. And so all of my efforts, once him and I were together in the break, were to make sure that he was going to be able to stay with us. So here it does, again, look like I'm dangling off the back a little bit, but really I'm just trying to make sure that I can stick Steven onto my wheel so that he does not get dropped from the breakaway. I was feeling okay in the break because I was just sitting last wheel most of the time, but I definitely was not feeling 100%, especially after going down. So we're coming into the last few laps here, and what was really interesting about this breakaway was that the field kept getting pretty close. Like I think they got maybe 10 or 12 seconds up to us, and then they would just fall back. And then they would close a little bit, and then they would fall back. And so we were really rubber banding. And like I said, Anton, super awesome rider, super awesome guy, incredibly strong. He did super well the whole series. And then the guy on the red bike were really pulling a ton in this breakaway. They were doing a ton of work, really keeping the pace high. You can see, again, here we go, just always up in that pace, keeping us really, really fast, trying to make sure that peloton isn't going to catch us. Steven and I are just sitting at the back at this point. We have about 3 to go, and so I tell Steven to just sit on my wheel, and I will try and lead him out for the win here. Hassan is back on the front of the peloton blocking for us. He did an incredible job as well. We got some comments after the race from some of the other riders that he was a huge nuisance and he was blocking really well. Not to the point where it was dangerous or where he was putting people in curbs, but just that he was slowing the group down enough so that we could stay away, which is incredibly helpful. And here we come through the finish line for the last time. This is 1 to go. You can see our pace is pretty darn high, and Steven and I are sitting the last 2 wheels here. I know that this isn't exactly where we want to be. We want to be a little bit further up. So I take the opportunity here when the brake starts to slow down a little bit to move up. I know Mark here in the ABD kit, and I know that he is a really good rider, and so I know that he's a wheel that I can trust and the wheel that I can be on. So I kind of slot in here. I know Steven is still on my wheel. Steven's going to fight for my wheel and do everything he can to stay on it. So I just try and stay on mark. This is a pretty good spot, sitting third and fourth wheel for the sprint. We have 2 corners left before the last 500-meter sprint. I don't have a ton in my legs, but I have enough that I can lead Steven out if we get a good jump. The other thing that I know is as soon as we come out of this corner, everyone is going to start to sprint, which is going to work to my advantage because that lets me stay in the draft longer and give Steven a better lead out, because then I'm not having to just sprint into the wind the entire time. And so I pass the guy on the red bike, and I'm coming up next to Mark here, and Steven comes by, and at this point I was just so tired and my legs were so dead, so I sat up. Kind of ended up biting me in the ass overall points wise, but Steven took the win. I ended up taking 6th overall in this race. Pretty good. Again, problems with the breakaway and getting in there from the pit, but what are you going to do? Thanks, guys. If you liked the video, go ahead and click the thumbs up. If you want to see more from me, make sure you click the subscribe button.